Have you ever noticed that some people seem to have a path to prosperity that's always open, while others struggle, try everything, and remain trapped in debt, closed doors, and blocks they can't explain? Maybe you've felt this yourself. You work hard, you strive, but it seems like something invisible is holding you back. Well, I'm going to tell you a truth that few have the courage to share. It's not just about effort, talent, or intelligence. There are spiritual blocks holding back your financial life. And if these blocks aren't broken, you can spend years trying and never get anywhere. Now, here's the good news. There are powerful spiritual practices, tested and practiced by men and women of faith, that literally destroy barriers, open paths, and bring prosperity where before there was only struggle. And I'm not talking about magic formulas, but concrete actions that transform your relationship with God, with money, and with the opportunities that are already around you, just waiting to manifest. In this video, I will reveal to you specific spiritual practices. These are like keys to unlock financial doors and permanently break down any obstacles holding you back. If you apply them seriously, your financial reality will never be the same. Stick around until the end, because the last practice is what separates those who thrive from those who continue to flounder in scarcity. Now it's clear. You've discovered that there are spiritual practices capable of breaking down blockages and opening real doors to prosperity. This knowledge can't be kept to yourself. By liking and subscribing to the channel, you strengthen this movement and help spread a message that truly transforms lives. Each new video will provide you with more practical tools to accelerate your financial and spiritual transformation. Like now, subscribe, and get ready, because the next content will take you even further. Have you ever stopped to think about how prayer can be much more than simply asking God for something? Most people view prayer as a kind of wish list, almost as if they were talking to someone powerful who needs to grant their wishes. But in practice, prayer is much deeper and more transformative than that. When you learn to pray consistently, not just in times of despair or need, but as a lifestyle, you create a true covenant with God. And it is precisely this covenant that begins to break down invisible barriers, including in the financial realm, where many still live. Imprisoned. Now let's be honest, who hasn't felt tired of praying and felt like nothing was happening? It's normal to feel that way because we humans want to see immediate results. But prayer isn't about human time, it's about God's time. When you persevere, even when you see nothing, something powerful happens in the spiritual world. It's as if each prayer is a seed being sown into the invisible soil of your life. Some germinate quickly, others take a while, but all, without exception, bear fruit. And when these fruits appear, it's usually in areas where you least expected them. How many times have you heard someone say, "I was praying for one thing, and suddenly another door opened, something I hadn't even imagined"? This is the effect of constant prayer. It opens paths where human eyes cannot see. And here comes an essential part. Prosperity doesn't start with money, it starts with direction. How many people do you know who had incredible opportunities but didn't know how to seize them because they were confused, insecure, or afraid to take the next step? This is where prayer becomes a secret weapon. Praying constantly not only brings you closer to God, but also aligns your thoughts, mind, and emotions with the right direction. It's like adjusting a compass. You may be lost along the way, but when you connect with Him, the spiritual compass points north, and you know exactly where to go. Now you might be thinking, "But I pray and nothing changes." Let me tell you something bluntly. Prayer without consistency is like trying to turn on a machine but always turning it off before it starts working. It's no use just turning it on and off. You need to keep the energy flowing until the process is complete. Prayer is spiritual energy. It's a continuous connection. It's like when you talk to a true friend. The more you talk, the more intimacy, the more trust, the more complicity. And the same happens with God. When prayer becomes a daily practice, even the little things begin to change. You notice simple solutions to problems that seemed enormous. You have ideas you never would have had alone. And you find opportunities in places that previously went unnoticed. I want you to think now about an area of your financial life that seems blocked. It could be a debt that never ends, a job that doesn't value you, a business that isn't taking off. Now imagine presenting this to God every day with sincerity, consistency, and faith. It's not about repeating pre-made phrases, but about speaking as if it were a dialogue because that's what it truly is. And when you do this, you don't just throw your worries into the air, you plant seeds of transformation that will, in time, bear concrete fruit. And let me break the ice here. Have you ever noticed how often we only remember to pray when the problem has already exploded? It's like that friend who only shows up to ask for favors when they're in trouble. You know someone like that, right? Well, sometimes we treat God this way ourselves, and this isn't a criticism. It's just a warning to you that constant prayer isn't a last resort, but the starting point for getting everything in your life, including your finances, back in order. There's one important thing here that I want you to do now. Comment on the word alliance below, because that's what we're talking about. Prayer isn't just a request. It's a covenant, a pact of trust with God. And when you write this, in addition to interacting with this content, you also publicly declare that you're willing to take this practice seriously. This simple act of commenting can be the first step toward your change, and I need you to understand something very important. Constant prayer creates a spiritual shield. Often you don't prosper not because you're incapable or because you don't have the opportunity, but because there are opposing forces trying to block your progress. When you pray without ceasing, you don't just ask for prosperity. You break down invisible resistance. It's like opening a road that was blocked. You may not even see it at first, but little by little, the obstacles are removed, and the path to prosperity begins to unfold before you. And you know what's most incredible about all this? It's that as you pray, you also change inside. Your heart grows stronger, your mind becomes clearer, and your faith transforms into action. Because there's no point in just praying and waiting idly by. Prayer gives you the courage to act, the wisdom to decide, and the discernment to avoid falling into traps. It's the fuel that propels you toward the right opportunities. Now let me tell you something without giving too much away. Prayer is just the first step on this journey. It opens doors, but there's something even more powerful that will enhance all of this. Something you already use every day without realizing it, but which may be being used against you instead of for you. And that's what we'll talk about in the next topic. Have you ever noticed how the words you speak daily have a direct impact on your life? Often, without realizing it, we declare defeat, failure, and scarcity, and then don't understand why everything seems to go wrong. It's common to hear people say, "I'll never get out of debt. This month is already over before the money even arrives. I have no luck winning anything. My life is all struggle." And do you know what the problem with this is? These statements don't just remain in the air. They create a spiritual atmosphere around you. Every word you speak carries weight, positive or negative. It's not an exaggeration. It's reality. Now think about it. If even in a simple conversation between friends, a single word can make or break someone's day. Imagine what happens when you constantly repeat phrases of failure and limitation to yourself. It's as if you're digging a deeper and deeper hole and burying yourself inside it. But the opposite is also true. When you begin to speak words of faith, hope, prosperity, and victory, you begin to build a ladder that lifts you out of that hole and places you on a much higher level. And that's where the power of spoken words comes into play. Many people think that declaring prosperity is just a matter of positive thinking, but it's not. Positive thinking alone may give you a temporary boost, but it doesn't have the same spiritual power. When you declare something in faith, aligned with God's truth, your word becomes like a key that unlocks doors to the unseen. It's like when you turn on the light in a dark room. The darkness doesn't argue. It simply disappears. The same happens with the right words at the right time. And let me give you a practical example. How many times have you seen someone who, even when facing difficulties, insists on saying, "I know I will overcome. I believe doors will open. This problem will become a testimony." These people seem to have a different strength. And it's not because they're better or more intelligent, but because they understand that the mouth speaks what the heart believes. And when the mouth and the heart align, faith manifests itself in the form of results. Now, let me break the ice with you. You know when someone compliments you and you respond, "Oh, it's no big deal," or "I'm not good at that." It seems innocent, but have you ever stopped to think that you're nullifying a good word with a bad one? It's as if someone were handing you a seed of victory and you threw it away. The truth is, every word has consequences. That's why it's so important to change the way you talk about your life, your future, and especially your finances. And here's a detail that may bother you, but it needs to be said. Complaining is declaring bankruptcy. Every time you grumble, criticize, and say nothing works, you're signing a spiritual contract of scarcity. Hard to hear, right? But it's reality. Complaining hinders prosperity, while declaring, faith opens doors. That's why you need to starting today, watching not only what you think, but especially what you say, because your mouth has the power of life and death, abundance and misery. Now, to make this even more practical, I want to propose an action for you. In the comments, write the word victory. This isn't just about engaging. It's about publicly declaring that you're going to change the way you talk about your life. By writing this, you're already taking a different stance. You're sealing a word that can transform your environment. And don't underestimate this act, because small actions can generate big results when done with faith and consistency. And let me tell you something in advance. Declaring prosperity doesn't mean denying problems. It's not pretending debts don't exist or that your salary is late. No, it's acknowledging reality, but choosing to talk about what you want to see, not just what you see now. It's like a farmer who looks at the parched land and, instead of complaining about the lack of rain, declares that the harvest will be plentiful. He's not denying the drought, but declaring the outcome he expects. And it's precisely this attitude that moves the spiritual and prepares the ground for change to happen. And do you know what the most incredible thing about all this is? When you start to watch and change your words, you also change your behavior. Because what you say reinforces what you believe, and what you believe determines your actions. It's like a cycle: speak, believe, act, reap. So if you want to reap prosperity, you need to sow words of prosperity. If you want to reap victory, you need to declare victory. If you want to reap abundance, you need to stop repeating phrases of defeat. But let me elaborate on one detail here to keep your attention. Declaring is powerful, but just talking doesn't solve everything. There's an extra step that many people forget that can further multiply the power of your words. It's something that goes far beyond speaking. It's a practice that affects not only your mind, but also your body, your faith, and your connection with God. And that's precisely what we'll talk about in the next topic. When we talk about fasting, many people turn up their noses and think, "Oh, that's not for me, I can't go without food." Or "That's old-fashioned, it doesn't make any difference these days." But the truth is that fasting is one of the most powerful spiritual practices available for breaking invisible chains and opening doors that have been blocked for years. And I'm not just talking about a mechanical religious practice, but a real, concrete, and transformative tool that directly impacts your spiritual life and, consequently, your financial life as well. Fasting is an act of sacrifice. It's when you consciously decide to give up something legitimate, like food, to draw closer to God and strengthen your spiritual life. When you fast, you're saying with your actions, "God, my greatest hunger is for you. I depend on you, not on what I have or what I can do with my own hands." And this attitude opens a huge space for the supernatural to manifest, because deep down, fasting isn't about going hungry. It's about silencing the voice of the flesh to hear God's voice more clearly. And let's be very practical here. How many times have you felt lost amid debt, unresolved business issues, or seemingly impossible financial decisions? In these moments, you can ask friends for advice or search the internet for tips, but nothing compares to the clarity that comes when you connect directly with God through fasting. It's as if fasting removes the noise from your mind and gives you focus, discernment, and peace to know exactly what to do. This has happened to me and to thousands of people who have decided to try this practice. Now, I know that for many people the idea of fasting seems impossible. After all, we live in a world where everything revolves around food, immediate pleasures, and comfort. But that's precisely where the power of fasting lies. It breaks your dependence on what is fleeting and strengthens your faith in what is eternal. It's as if you're telling your body, "You don't control me, my spirit does." And when this reversal happens, things begin to change. And let me tell you something few people realize. Many of the financial prisons people face have nothing to do with a lack of talent or ability, but with spiritual captivity that traps them in cycles of failure. Every time they start something new, it goes wrong. Every time they save money, a problem arises, and the money disappears. This is no coincidence. It's a spiritual pattern. And fasting is precisely the practice that has the power to break these cycles. Because when you fast, you're not just depriving yourself of food, You're declaring war on everything that's trying to imprison you. And here I want to break the ice. You know that feeling of overeating and feeling heavy, sleepy, and lacking energy for anything. Well, when you fast, the exact opposite happens. Your body feels lighter, your mind more active, and your spirit more awake. It may seem strange to say this, but it's true. And this lightness is reflected in all areas of your life. That's why so many people who fast report not only deeper spiritual experiences, but also more assertive financial decisions, new work strategies, and even doors opened that they never imagined. Now pay attention to one thing. Fasting is not an exchange with God. It's not, I'll go without food so God will give me money. That's not how it works. Fasting is a tool to align you with His will, to strengthen your faith, to give you clarity and spiritual power. And when you're aligned with God, things begin to flow naturally. What was once blocked becomes unlocked. What seemed impossible becomes possible. What was closed becomes open. So, I want you to do something now to cement this learning. Comment on the word breakdown here. Because fasting is exactly that, breaking bondages, breaking cycles of defeat, breaking everything that was holding you back. And by writing this word, you are already declaring that you believe in this power and that you are willing to experience this transformation. And you know what's most interesting? Fasting, besides breaking these invisible prisons, also generates something within you that is essential for prosperity: discipline. When you learn to control your body, you also learn to control your impulses. How many times have you spent money without thinking, just because you were anxious or wanted immediate gratification? Fasting teaches you to say no to what is momentary and yes to what is lasting. And this discipline, applied to your financial life, generates incredible results. But let me tell you something that will make you curious. Fasting is powerful, but it doesn't work alone. It needs to be combined with another practice that has the power to move God's heart and accelerate results in ways few people understand. And that's precisely what we'll talk about in the next topic. Many people talk about faith, but few understand what it truly means to live by faith. Most people think faith is simply believing something can happen, waiting and hoping it works out. But true faith goes far beyond that. It's not passive. It's not just a nice feeling that stays inside you. Real faith is active. It's practical. It's action. It's when you believe in something so much that you start acting as if it were real, even without seeing anything yet. This is the kind of faith that moves mountains, opens financial doors, unlocks paths, and transforms lives in ways that seem illogical to outsiders. The problem is that many people even say they have faith, but live full of doubt. And doubt is like a hole in a bucket full of water. You can fill it from the top, but it's leaking underneath. There's no point in praying, fasting, and declaring if, deep down, you always harbor a glimmer of distrust in your heart. It's like planting a seed and digging in the soil every day to see if it's growing. The plant will never develop because the root doesn't have time to take hold. Faith is planting and believing that the seed will sprout, even if it takes time, even if you don't see anything at first. And that's where a hard truth comes in. Many people don't prosper, not because they lack the ability, but because they let doubt guide their choices. It's the person who feels in their heart driven to start a business, but holds back because they're afraid of failure. It's the person who gets a chance, but backs off because they wonder, is this really for me? It's the person who dreams of growth, but starts out convinced it won't work. And then, of course, it ends up not working. Not because God doesn't want to bless, but because the person themselves didn't take the leap of faith. Now, let's be honest. Who hasn't felt butterflies in their stomach when faced with an important decision? Who hasn't been paralyzed, thinking about 1,000 things that could go wrong? This is normal. It's part of being human. The difference is that those who live by faith don't let fear have the final say. It's precisely in these moments that faith needs to be stronger than logic. Faith doesn't ignore the problem, but believes that God already has the solution. And when you decide to act on this, extraordinary things begin to happen. And let me give you a simple example. Think of Peter when Jesus called him to walk on water. As long as he kept his eyes fixed on Jesus, he did the impossible. But when he looked at the waves, the wind, and the risks, he began to sink. The same is true in financial life. As long as you maintain firm faith without a doubt, you walk on waters that seemed impossible. But when you start looking at the bills, the debts, and the negative comments around you, you sink. The key is to keep your faith active, without giving room for doubt to steal what was already happening. And here's a very important point. True faith isn't irresponsibility. It's not doing anything at any cost and calling it faith. Faith isn't impulse. Faith is conviction. And this conviction generates the courage to act even when the outlook seems unfavorable. How many stories have you heard of people who started small businesses with nothing but faith and today live prosperously? These people had no human guarantees, but they had spiritual certainty. And this certainty is what made all the difference. I want you to do something right now to fix this in your life. Write the word in the comments, faith, not just as an answer, but as a declaration. By writing this word, you are showing that you choose to believe, that you choose to act, that you will not let doubt paralyze you. It is a public commitment to yourself and to God that you will begin to live this practical faith that transforms. And you know what's even more interesting? When you start living by faith that acts, you notice that small doors begin to open. An unexpected conversation becomes an opportunity. A simple idea turns into a business. A courageous move yields results you never could have imagined. It's as if the whole heavens begin to conspire in your favor because you decided to truly believe. But here's a detail that will intrigue you. Faith is undoubtedly powerful, but there's a practice that, when combined with it, supernaturally multiplies its effects. A simple but often overlooked practice that transforms a little into a lot and accelerates results in an impressive way. And that's precisely what we'll talk about in the next topic. Have you ever noticed how we're trained to only see what's missing? It's amazing. We wake up in the morning and instead of being grateful for our bed, our air, our life, we already think about what we don't have. I need more money. I need to pay that bill. I need to get what hasn't arrived yet. And that's precisely where one of the biggest obstacles to prosperity lies, a lack of gratitude. Because when you only look at what's missing, you never realize what you already have. And if you don't see what you already have, how are you going to multiply it? Gratitude isn't just saying thank you mechanically. It's an inner attitude. It's truly recognizing that what you have today, no matter how small it seems, is already a blessing. It's looking at your plate of food and, instead of complaining because it's not what you wanted, being grateful that it's there. It's looking at your salary, even if it's tight, and being grateful that something is coming in. It's looking at your health, even if it's not perfect, and being grateful that you're still standing. This attitude changes everything because it creates an atmosphere of abundance. And I know it might seem strange to say this in the midst of financial troubles. Someone might think, how can I be grateful if I'm in debt? That's the secret. Gratitude doesn't come after victory, it comes before. It paves the way for victory. It's as if gratitude were a key that God looks at and says, this child understands, this child trusts, this child values what they already have, so they're ready to receive more. That's why you've probably heard stories of people who, even with little, managed to do so much. They understood the power of gratitude. And let me break the ice here. Have you ever noticed how boring it is to talk to someone who only complains? It seems like their energy drains the room. Now compare that to someone who is grateful, who talks about good things, who celebrates even small victories. Don't you want to be around that person? Gratitude attracts, while grumbling repels. And in the spiritual world, the exact same thing happens. When you constantly complain, you repel blessings. When you constantly give thanks, you attract multiplication. A practical example. Remember the biblical passage about the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. Jesus had very little in his hands before a hungry crowd, but instead of complaining that it wasn't enough, he gave thanks. And it was gratitude that multiplied what was in his hands. This is a principle. When you give thanks, the little becomes much. When you complain, even the much becomes little. And that's exactly why I want to propose something now. Write the word in the comments gratitude, not just as a pretty word, but as a declaration. Declare that from today on you will choose to be grateful before complaining, that you will change the way you talk about your life and your finances. This simple act of writing can be a turning point for you because it's a way of committing to this practice. And notice something interesting. Gratitude not only attracts spiritual blessings, but also changes your daily behavior. A grateful person spends better, manages better, and takes better advantage of opportunities. They don't waste because they value them. They don't throw away because they recognize that every resource is valuable. And this attitude generates discipline, financial intelligence, and even opens new doors. Now, imagine how your financial life could change when you stop repeating phrases like "it never works out," "my money doesn't grow," "I'll never get out of this situation," and start saying, "I'm grateful for what I have today, because I know it will be greater tomorrow." This shift in mindset, combined with the practices we've already discussed, creates an atmosphere of irresistible prosperity. But there's something even deeper tied to this principle. Gratitude opens the door to a practice that's often scary, but is one of the most powerful secrets to prosperity. It's a practice that shows God that you trust Him so much that you're willing to let go to receive so much more. And that's precisely what we'll talk about in the next topic. There's a principle that many people don't understand, but which is present throughout life. What you sow, you reap. This isn't just a catchphrase, it's a spiritual and natural law. If you plant beans, you'll harvest beans. If you plant apples, you'll harvest apples. And when we talk about financial prosperity, this principle also applies. You can't expect to reap abundance if you never sow anything. And here, I'm not just talking about money, but about generosity as a lifestyle. Do you know what the big problem is? Most people are so focused on holding on to what little they have that they can't let go. They live in fear of lacking and end up holding on to everything. But the fear of lacking creates exactly that, lack. It's like someone who holds a seed so tightly in their hand, afraid of losing it, that they never put it in the ground. The result, it never multiplies. Now, when you decide to sow, you free up space for growth. The seed leaves your hand, but it doesn't disappear. It goes into the soil and returns as a fruit, much larger than what you gave it. And here I need to be direct. Generosity isn't about giving what's left over. It's about trusting that by giving, you don't lose, you gain. It's an act of faith. It's saying, "God, I believe that what I give isn't going away. It's going to the right place and it will return multiplied." This is precisely why many people who have the habit of helping, offering, and contributing prosper in a different way. They understand that generosity isn't an expense, it's an investment. Maybe you felt the urge to help someone, but at the time thought, "Oh, but I need it too, so I'd better keep it to myself." And then you felt like you missed the chance to do something good. This has happened to many people. And you know what's funny? Often when you give and help, even if you don't have anything left over, a short time later something unexpected happens that gives you back in double measure. This isn't a coincidence, it's a harvest. And let me break the ice here. You know that person you know who's always generous, helpful, giving and sharing. Understand how their life seems to flow differently. Things seem to work out for them more easily. Of course, we all face difficulties, but those who live generosity as a lifestyle are always surrounded by open doors, people willing to help, and opportunities that arise along the way. This doesn't happen by chance. It happens because what you sow, you reap. And here, I want to give you a warning. Don't confuse generosity with naivety. It's not about giving in any way, anywhere to anyone. It takes wisdom to sow in fertile soil. It's about helping those who truly need it, investing in causes that bring about transformation, supporting those who are sowing good things. When you sow in the right soil, the harvest is certain. And one more thing, generosity is not measured by value, but by the heart. Sometimes someone's little is worth more than another's much, because the little was given with sacrifice and faith. It's like the story of the widow who gave only 2 coins, but Jesus said she had given more than anyone else because she gave everything she had. In other words, the size of the seed doesn't matter. What matters is the heart of the sower. Now I want you to do something simple but powerful. Write in the comments the word sowing, because when you write, you're declaring that you'll no longer live just hoarding, but that you'll choose to release in order to reap. This act is symbolic, but it marks the beginning of a new stance in your life. And notice how all of this connects with what we've discussed so far. Prayer opens paths, the spoken word brings life, fasting breaks chains, faith undoubtedly drives action, gratitude multiplies what you already have. And now sowing is the practice that transforms your faith into real movement in the world. It's putting something into the spiritual soil and waiting for the harvest. But let me tell you in advance, generosity isn't just about what you give, but also about what it generates within you. It shapes your character, strengthens your confidence, and brings you ever closer to something that will be essential in your journey to prosperity. A clear vision of the dreams God has already planted in your heart. And that's exactly what we'll talk about in the next topic. Have you ever noticed that many people dream, but give up halfway? The problem isn't dreaming, it's a lack of clarity and consistency. Vision without perseverance is lost, and perseverance without vision becomes aimless effort. That's why the two must go hand in hand, because they're like two legs. If you try to walk on just one, you won't get anywhere. When we talk about prosperity, this is precisely the principle. It's not enough to simply pray, fast, speak words, and even sow seeds. All of this is powerful, but it needs to be connected to a clear vision of where you want to go and sustained by consistency, so you don't stop until you see it happen. God always works with vision. He plants dreams within us that often seem too big, even impossible. But this is precisely what separates those who prosper from those who remain trapped. The ability to see in the invisible that which does not yet exist in the natural. Yonggi Cho called this the power of the fourth dimension, seeing by faith before it happens. And this is an incredible key, because while many people only believe in what they see, those who live by spiritual vision begin to move as if they have already conquered. It's like someone who builds a house first in their heart and mind before even putting up the walls. But here's a part that catches many people off guard. There's no point in having a vision if you don't have perseverance. Because the time between dreaming and realization is what tests our faith the most. You might even start out excited, full of energy, but as the days, weeks, and months pass, difficulties appear. Doors take time to open. Results don't come quickly. Problems pile up. And it's during this period that most people give up. It's during this interval that dreams die, not because they weren't from God, but because the person lacked the patience and perseverance to sustain them. I know waiting isn't easy. Maybe you've felt this yourself. You have a dream of seeing your financial life transformed, but when you look at reality, it seems like nothing is happening. The urge is to give up. But let me tell you a truth that can change your perspective. Every time you remain steadfast, even without seeing anything, you are watering the invisible seed that was planted. Perseverance is like water. Even when you can't see the root, it is growing. The problem is that many stop the process just before the harvest. And let me break the ice here. Have you ever seen someone start the gym all excited, but stop after 2 weeks because they didn't see immediate results? Well, it's the same in spiritual and financial life. Some people start praying, fasting, declaring, sowing, but stop after a few days because it didn't work. Prosperity isn't fast food. It's planting and harvesting. And those who persist, those who continue, those who endure, those who see the fruit. Therefore, vision and perseverance must go hand in hand. Vision shows you the future, gives you direction, and keeps you motivated. Perseverance sustains you through the process, gives you discipline, and keeps you going when the excitement fades. It's this combination that turns dreams into reality. And here's something very powerful. When you have a clear vision, even difficulties make sense, because you understand they're part of the journey. And when you have perseverance, even the lean days become learning experiences, because you know they won't last forever. Now I want you to do something practical to fix this. Write the word in the comments, vision. This will be like a seal of what you've decided to undertake today. To no longer live without clarity, and to not give up halfway. Declaring this word is a way to align your mind with what God has already placed in your heart, and also to show that you're willing to continue, even when everything seems against you. And here's the most impactful detail. Vision and perseverance not only build prosperity, but shape who you become in the process. Because it's not just about what you achieve, it's about the person you become along the way. That's why the chosen cannot afford to give up. Because each step, each wait, each struggle strengthens faith and prepares you for something greater. Now you've realized how these spiritual practices can truly transform your financial life and open doors that have been blocked for years. What once seemed impossible now makes sense, and this knowledge is already producing changes within you. This content was created to empower you, and if it has somehow clarified your vision and given you direction, you can also be an instrument of transformation for others. Just like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach even further and touch those who also need this change. Write the word here in the comments prosperity to show that you're committed to living this new reality. And get ready because the next video will reveal an even deeper key, something that connects everything you've learned so far and will accelerate your journey even further. What comes next is the step many people never discover, and it's exactly what will take you to a completely different level.